Right, it says we're live, which will surprise the crap out of anybody that is thinking, hang on a second, it's not Sunday, what's going on? Yes, we do get the chance every once in a while to do these incidental episodes, streaming to all of our usual suspects, to Facebook, to Twitch, to YouTube, to X of all things. I think I've still got an account up and running on that thing. I barely look at it. I can imagine it's a little bit like the feral kids of Mad Max running around of Beyond Thunderdome. That's how I picture Threads at the moment. But no, if you have got your notifications turned on, if you are a subscriber, as always, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've got one or two people who are joining in already and joining the stream. Welcome along to this incidental episode, talking to a very talented writer who has put together a hell of a book. I've read the first issue, or the first volume, and it's brilliant, and it looks astonishing. The artwork's amazing, the writing's really cool, really well laid out. Listen, the whole thing's a complete package. Really looking forward to talking to Michael Schwartz about this book. As always, if there's any comments or questions, jump in. And of course, let us know where you're watching from and what you're up to. Dan Berry's saying hello, good morning. I think he's actually rather upset with me at the moment because we're putting together our votes for the Eisner Awards. So yeah, I'll get them to you, mate. Don't worry, they're on the way. Chuck a toilet as well. We got Toby's joining us. Hello there. Listen, looking forward to catching up with you in San Diego. Absolutely. So yeah. Listen, if you're heading to San Diego, tell us what you're up to. Are you going to be attending panels? Are you going to be attending my panel? News about that on the way. I can't give you too much just yet, but yes, the panel has been confirmed. I've just got to get guests and everything all lined up. The thing is about my panel, it's about the British invasion, which means I've got to try and get some Brits on the panel, and it's a very expensive proposition to get Brits out to San Diego in July. But we've got one or two who are definitely confirmed, looking at having some video content on screen as well. Looking forward to announcing more about that as we get closer to San Diego Comic-Con. Dan Berry, can I talk about your panel? No, you can't. And I knew I shouldn't have told him the date and time, but that's what happens. Listen, let's get this today out of the way. This is going to be a cool chat with a very cool bloke talking about a very, very cool book indeed. Right then, hello there, everybody. Welcome along to Talking Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. My name's Leonard Sultana, and usually on a Sunday, we are talking comics, Comic-Cons, and all the stuff and nonsense we get to enjoy at such shows. However, every once in a while, we get the chance to throw in an incidental episode. Maybe it's something that we've wanted to organise for some time. We just can't organise something around a weekend, or we just want to get it on as soon as we can, because we're mostly excited about it. And this, I think, is something I'm very excited about indeed. This is about a book which I've kind of seen on the peripheries because I've done the migration from Twitter and now moved to X, or to Threads. There was somebody that kept showing up on my timeline, and I added him as a follow, and I'm incredibly grateful I did, because what I've seen coming out of Michael Schwartz feed has just been amazing. This is the book that we're going to be talking about. This is Armored, which has been put together with him and Ishmael Hernandez. Some incredible cover work as well by the likes of David Mack, Becky Cloonan, Trevor Henderson. An amazing talent pool has been putting this book together. And it's a pleasure to bring on the co-creator and writer of this particular opus, which is Michael Schwartz, who's joining us. Hello there, Michael. How the devil are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to talk to you. You know, I've been following you too. When I started following you, I was like, oh, I like this guy. He's got good content.
I try my best. All I just do is just talk pish and bibble and sort of like get very enthusiastic about stuff. That's all I can do, really.
But that's what I love. I'm very enthusiastic, so it's good to find other enthusiastic people about comics. So,
well, listen, I'm very grateful for you to say yes to coming on to Talking Con to talk about this book. First things first, I think it's best that we have an introduction for everybody, a little bit of a pocket bio leading up to the creation of Armored. Michael Schwartz, who the devil are you?
Well, I'm primarily a feature film screenwriter. I've written movies for Netflix, a movie called No Malone, and then a movie for Hulu called R.L. Stine's Zombie Town, which starred Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase. So I've been living in the animation feature film world for a number of years. And, you know, it's a tough industry to be in, I have to say. You write a lot of movies that never get made. And I kind of hit a point where I was like, you know, I'm sick of writing movies for these producers. They never find the financing or whatnot. I don't own them because they pay me to write them. So I said, I think that I don't want to write another, you know, spec script or anything like that. I want to write a comic book. I had my entire comic book collection stolen, and I had started recollecting, and I realized I was reading like 5 to 10 comics every night. I had long boxes next to my bed. Down in my office, there's a giant walk-in closet, and it's filled with short boxes. And I was like, I read more comics than I watch movies. What am I doing? I've always wanted to make a comic. Now's the time to do it. And I wrote a script, jumped into it, had a Marvel artist who primarily works in animation read the script. I said, is this any good at all? And he loved it. And it kind of made me decide I need to do this now. I need to get into comics. I've wanted to be in comics when I was a kid. Somewhere along the lines, I transitioned to film. And now I'm here, you know, 40 years later.
The circle turns.
Yes.
The circle turns.
Yeah.
Reading Armored, you can definitely see that your love of comics. I mean, you wear your love on your sleeve, absolutely, and especially.
Yes.
And we'll talk about craft in a bit, because you've really got a real sense of page turn timing, the sense of what's going on a page. Because, I mean, we all talk about it is a different storytelling. It's a different set of muscles, absolutely. Yeah. But you can see your love of comics absolutely on every page. But I'd love to know what kind of comics you were reading as a kid, because this isn't sort of straightforward mainstream big two kind of fare. This is very much Image, maybe a little bit of Dark Horse. Where was your comics reading back in the day?
So I started really young. My dad collected Silver Age, Golden Age books. So like he as a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, he says I was in like a carrier when he would take me to the comic shop every weekend, and he was picking up like, you know, old Spider-Man books and stuff. But I had a pull list probably when I was 4 or 5 started, and I started with Silver Surfer, Incredible Hulk, and then eventually, you know, the 90s Spider-Man series with McFarlane, and X-Men as well. That's where I started. How much of it I read, I don't remember. Like, I think I was looking at the pictures, and my dad was just excited that I was interested in it enough to want it. Then when I actually became old enough to read it, I started to collect Spawn. I was probably too young reading Spawn, you know, Violator, Wildcats, and then eventually got into Hellboy. Really big into Hellboy, The Goon. So the late 90s, I kind of got out of superhero books. I was still getting the few Spider-Man books, but you know, my dad would still buy it for me. When I was in high school, it wasn't until the early 2000s that I discovered Jeff Johns' Flash. I was a huge fan of the 1990s Flash, and when I saw Scott Collins' artwork in the Flash comic, I had to pick it up. And I was reading. I loved it so much. I started picking up everything DC. So
Right.
I came back to superheroes, and it was through Jeff's work. And I was just collecting everything, like that whole early 2000s, right to about 2012 when they did the New 52 launch. I was all in on DC. I was picking up Marvel too, but I was a DC guy at the time. So
I mean, I can certainly see the Jeff Johns influence, especially kind of like, because I mean, however old we all may be,
yeah.
he's definitely got a real sense of timing, certainly for kids, young teens, that real energy in the way that they interact and dialogue, and you can see that in Armored. So you can definitely see the Jeff Johns influence. When you had your comic books stolen, how long ago was this, by the way?
So that was 2018. We just had a baby, and someone broke into my garage when I was cleaning out the closet that I had here.
I've got this cold hand on my heart, sir.
I literally told my wife, I'm never collecting a comic again. And she was like, yay!
Well, that backfired.
Yeah, it backfired so bad because I found a pawn shop that sells 50-cent comics. These are Canadian 50 cents, I should say. So, you know, it's really cheap. And he felt so bad for me, the pawn shop owner, that he would tell me every time a collection would come in. So I was just picking up, you know, it'd be like, oh, shoot, he just got in Alpha Flight issue 2 to 70. And I would just take all of it, you know. It was good and bad. It was good because I was reading more than ever. I started a pull list at the local comic shop again. It got me right back into it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the reason why I asked the question is because you're obviously replacing your old collection. And that's kind of like, it's good to have that sentimentality, and so like you're reliving your childhood and reliving all those books that you had. But were you also picking up new titles as well and kind of mixing those in with your pull lists and getting all those together?
I've always had a pull list. So like, even though it's so funny because I told my wife, you know, I'm never collecting another book again. I think I still had books being collected at my LCS. I just couldn't walk in there and get them. I was like, I can't do it. And they were like pulling whatever was coming out in 2018. At the same time, I had to stop for a while collecting between about 2012 to 2017, I'd say, or even 2016. So I missed New 52. So I was picking up New 52 books and being like, wow, I can't believe I missed Snyder's Batman, or I can't believe I missed, you know, Jeff Johns' JLA and Aquaman. I was rereading all that stuff. So it was all new to me. But yeah, I always have a pull list.
Cool. Because that's what was kind of leading me on to the question, because when you mentioned about Jeff Johns, and I love the fact that you refer to them as, oh, it's Jeff Johns' Flash, it's Snyder's Batman. You're definitely gravitating towards writers. Is there any writers that you definitely keep an eye on when it comes to your pull list and even the collection that you're kind of rebuilding? And have you studied their scripting style? How have you studied the actual craft of creating comics? Okay,
so I'm really bad because I think Jeff has been such an inspiration to me as a screenwriter, actually. Like I never really studied screenwriters too much. There were the odd ones like William Goldman. I'd read his books. There was the odd one I would pick up, but Jeff influenced me as far as storytelling. Like I liked how he moves his stories forward. There's always a push. Like every issue had a lot of story, and I was kind of using that with my feature film writing. I wanted each act to feel full. I wanted to move the story along. I wanted things to change. I wanted to be cliffhangers in the acts.
Yeah, no dead weight per page.
No dead weight at all.
Yeah.
And you know, I write kids TV or kids movies a lot, and kids, you got to keep their attention. You got to make it quick. You got to make it fast. You got to. And so when it came to comics, I will admit something. You know, I grew up on the Stan Lee era, so my dad was reading me Amazing Spider-Man like 1 through 100. I think he read me when I was young. He was reading me Fantastic Four, so that That had a huge influence on me. But when it came to my own book, I was also inspired by how many comics were annoying me. I hated picking up a $4.99 book and being like, nothing fucking happened. What? Excuse the language. I was like, nothing happened this issue. I know that something's going to happen issue 3 because this writer, you know, in particular, he writes these 12-issue maxi series and it'll get collected and it'll read fantastic. But as a single issue collector, I read graphic novels, but I read way more single floppies, you know?
Thank you. Oh no, I've been having this conversation recently.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
it always keeps coming around. I'm a single issue hoard. I mean, because I'm an episodic.
Yes.
I take episodic storytelling. I love a good cliffhanger. I love the ability to stop, pause, digest, talk to it about with other people. Binging, just no, I can't do it. And also trades. The only trades I buy is if there's some really good behind the scenes stuff or process stuff in the back of the book, or if it's just been oversized, or if it's been presented really well. But if I've got the single issues, I mean, I haven't got the trade for Woman of Tomorrow, Supergirl. That is still one of my favorite recent runs of a book, and I collect them all. I'm an episodic.
Yep.
No, so I'm right there with you on that one.
Well, then hopefully when you start reading the rest of Armored, you'll see how episodic it is, because I felt that and I was like, I don't want to pick up a book for $4.99 and then feel like they haven't even told me what, like, I don't know what the series is about, or the last page you kind of have an idea. I really was trying to focus in on, by the middle of this book, you should know what this book is about. And that's what I did with Armored. And so what I did is I went back. So Geiger had just come out. I think it was the first volume of Geiger. I took Geiger. I took Hawkman 1. I took Green Lantern 1, all of Jeff Johns' first issues. And I literally made an Excel document studying his scenes, studying where twists happened, just to see what he did. I did the same thing with Tom King. I took his stuff. I was looking at it. I'm not. Tom King is more of a, you know, he's more of a novelist to me, which he comes from novel writing.
Yeah.
And I like his style, but I'm never going to be that. But I wanted to study it, so I think I lean more to reading more Jeff Johns' type of writing when it comes to comic books. And I just studied it, and then I was like, okay, I know my story now. I need to tell it in my own way. If I was writing this a movie, it would be completely different. Movies don't have like cliffhanger moments so much. And I was like, this has to feel like a comic. It cannot feel like a movie. I don't even care if it becomes a movie ever. Yes, it would be great financially because it's expensive making a comic, but I wanted it to be a comic first, foremost, and forever. And so I'm glad you felt that reading it.
Oh, very much so. Absolutely. I mean, because you hear that conversation about creators or writers, especially those that have come from screenwriting or television writing, and they've got this idea for a comic, and you read it and you go, yeah, right. Yeah, you really had an idea for a comic on this one. Yeah. I'm sorry, but when I hear this conversation about Berserker, oh yeah, that was created as a comic. Yeah, okay, right, I'll read it, whatever. But you read Armored, and you definitely feel that there's a momentum per page. It's written for that. So I suppose then you have this idea. You've got a script, which I'd love. I mean, that was the next question I was going to ask. Was it kind of Alan Moore 350-page opus, or was it 35 pages, nice and simple breakdowns, allow your artist to breathe? Where do you live on that?
So it was 30 pages pretty much. Like, the odd page went a little over. You know, I break down every panel for him, what I want, where I let, you know, I think it's been a learning curve for both of us in figuring out where does that co-creator world live. I think in the first issue, it was really me being like, you know, I hired him. I was like,
Right.
I'm also new to comics as far as creating. So I was very much like, you know, I want there to be a sunset in this photo, in this panel. I want it to be this. I want it to be that. So, you know, this is another thing. I'm sure Clover hated it, but when I said I told them this is an ongoing series, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You're a nobody in comics. Who are you to think you could do an ongoing series?" I was so adamant. I was like, "This is not. This is going on and on." With that said, we're on issue 6, so that is the second arc of the story. Ishmael and I have found kind of a great groove where I'm now kind of like opening up. Like even on the last few issues of this arc, I've opened up a bit to be like, you know, I'm not as like adamant, like it has to be 5 panels. It has to be this, you know. Even actually he did a lot of work, like as far as I'll say it's 4 panels, but how what he gives importance to is him. So I give him all the credit for that. He really is the cinematographer, I would say, of the book. And I've pulled back in directing him. But what I like about on issue 6 now is I've created these new characters, but he's been like, hey, can this character be in a wheelchair? And he doesn't necessarily tell me, he'll tell me kind of a reason why, but it literally opens up the story for me where it's like, wow, I can now do this with that character. So we've hit a great stride where I think we're becoming co-creators on like later in the series. It may have started with me being, he probably was annoyed with me being like, fix this, change this. But now I'm like, just go for it. And it comes in and it's better than ever.
I'm kind of jumping ahead with my questions, and I will come back. Because in that regard, then, I'm interested in the fact that you've got a brilliant editor involved. So it sounds like at first you were kind of self-editing the process and the story and the creative juices. Where did your editor come in?
Okay, so my editor actually came in on issue 1. I hired him as well. His name is Chris Stevens. He's an Eisner Award-winning writer, and Chris, the first issue may have even been longer. Now that I think about it, he probably moved things around and helped. Where he was really great was making sure I didn't overnote Ishmael, because I would have had a tendency to be like, why is that character's face like that? And he'd be like, Mike, stop it. You're crazy. Like, this panel is perfect. And I'd be like, but it should be this, you know. I didn't know. And thank God he was there to police me and also catch Ishmael, because Ishmael would have painted a panel a certain way. And Chris would have been like, you're going to have to flip that, buddy, you know, once you scan it in, you have to flip that panel because the lettering's not going to work. And so it was helpful for both of us. And he did that throughout. Like, honestly, this book would not exist without Chris Stevens. I give him all the praise. I give Ishmael all the praise for the gorgeous work he's done. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. Did that answer your question? I don't know.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean,
so
I absolutely believe that an editor or editing, right? I've said this before because I wanted to do panels, certainly like Thought Bubble and stuff. Editing, colorists, letterers, they are the masters of the dark arts. They are the ones that the glue that bring a good book together.
And also, like, the way I look at Chris is, it's, you know, I may be the director and writer, but he's and I guess the executive producer, because I'm funding the whole thing. But Chris is kind of the producer behind it, because he helped me assemble the teams, the covers. He did so much. I could go on. I could talk endlessly about how much he put into this book.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, Clover is your publisher, and like they said, you may have had an established background in TV and film and scripting, but when it comes to comics, you are a nobody.
Yeah.
Where do you start then? So you wanted to put this book together. Was it a case of going to cons, coming across, finding artists physically, or did you find them online? How did you bring your team together?
Oh my goodness. So Ishmael, we connected with through a Facebook group. I tell everyone first hire an editor. Like that's what I did. That was my first thing. Then it was through a Facebook group where it's called Connecting Writers with Comic Book Artists, which I highly recommend everyone join if you're interested in becoming a writer, a comic book writer. And Chris found his post of his, and we hired him pretty quickly. There was a little bit of back and forth. His artwork was beautiful, but I was concerned, thinking, oh, I read so much Marvel and DC stuff. None of the readers of that stuff is going to be interested in a watercolorist. That was my concern. But I loved it. Chris loved it. My wife, who reads graphic novels, but not like floppies, she loved it. I was like, we just got to go for it. And I think his artwork works for all ages. I think it works for adult stuff. So that's how we found him. Farron Delgado was someone Chris had worked with. He's our letterer. We got him. When the first issue was complete, Chris had been working with Nick Patera on a book called Axe Wielder John. He did the Manhattan Project with Jonathan Hickman. And he loved it, and he wanted to do a cover. And so he was the first person to really throw his support behind this book and was like, I'm doing a cover for you guys. And he just did it. And that was the first cover. And I had no idea how to get a publisher. I had been to cons. I had a really bad timing. I couldn't, I go to cons all the time, but I couldn't make it to the big Toronto cons that year when we were starting out, and I didn't know what to do. So I sent it to Image, because they have this black void you can send comics to. If you're familiar with, you can just send it to a black void and maybe you'll get a response. And during that time, Chris had been working with Clover, and he said, oh, I'm going to send it to Hank Canals over at Clover. He's the publisher. Sent it to him. Hank immediately wanted to get on a call because he loved the first issue. And I loved his enthusiasm for the book. And they're a fairly small publishing company. They do a lot of art books, and they've done a few graphic novels, but not a whole lot. And so I was like unsure of, should I go with them? Should I not? But I just loved his enthusiasm. And just speaking to him, he understood what I wanted to do with this book. And I was so adamant. I was like, this is not a graphic novel first. It is a single issue series. And I'm sure that it annoys them to no extent. But I have a pull list. I want this to be on stands, I love a graphic novel, but it had to be single issues. And so they went for it. And I love that they went for it. And I like that they're this new upcoming company. And that's how we got Clover.
Cool. I just realized we're 25 minutes into this, and we have yet to actually talk about the book and do the elevator pitch, so that people who are watching this, who may be interested, certainly in the pages that we've talked about and shown, and the conversation we've had so far, we haven't done the elevator pitch for the series. So go on, tell everybody about Armored.
It is about a boy, an orphaned boy, who finds a medieval suit of armor that is haunted by the ghostly knight who used to wear the armor hundreds of years prior. And so he has to train the boy how to use this magical armor to defeat this creature. There's a bit of a mystery involved as to what this creature is. And, he's adopted by this lovely couple who lost their son years prior, and there's a bit of a mystery as to how he died as well. So it's a mystery book. I've had one podcast named Bada Boom call it Stranger Things meets Sword in the Stone, and I think that's the best way to describe it.
I'll go along with that.
So that's the elevator pitch.
Yeah. Where's it set? Because I'm suspecting England, but whereabouts in England?
Okay, this book, I don't know a better word to use other than it's a bit schizophrenic, because I'm Canadian. We use like the British spelling, right?
Yeah.
But I called it Armored, but I use the American title. It's titled how Americans would.
That's where I was confused.
Yeah, there's a lot. The whole thing is confused. Try to imagine this in just a parallel timeline. Okay, so I have never been to your country, Leonard.
Okay.
But I used to travel to Germany a lot as a kid. That's like where my family originates from. So I kind of was like, this is a general. We talked a lot. Me and Chris talked a lot about where it's set, and we didn't want it to be set anywhere. It's a generic European country. Ishmael.
Okay. This is why I asked.
Okay, Ishmael is
The school scenes seemed American. The external scenes seemed a little Germanic, and then it's referencing sort of like British culture, and I'm going, where's this set? And then about 3/4 of the way through, I thought, who cares?
Thank you.
Just dive in. It didn't matter. It just the story took you.
I'm going to upset, I think, British people in issue 3, though. So I apologize now. Please forgive me on this. Okay, so yes, when I started out, it was like, it's just generic Europe. Ishmael's from Spain. Ishmael lives in Spain. So there is a bit of a Spanish flair to a lot of it, too. I don't know if you noticed that. So with that said, issue 3, I made a huge mistake in in the script, they go to a different city, and I said it's like a London-esque city. Ishmael drew it as London, exactly London. And Clover saw the book and was like, what the hell? And we're like, we can't repaint it. So it's an alternate timeline universe where it's set in Britain and people talk like Americans and Canadians. But the truth is you'll see we introduce a character at the very, very end of the first arc that is from another country. So it's my fault. I screwed up. Please forgive me. I hope you enjoy the story, even though it's kind of set in a weird London-esque English countryside.
It's an Elseworlds.
It is a bit Elseworlds.
I'll go along with that.
The truth is that, I live in Canada. I've had people read it being like, what castle in Canada is this? I'm like, we don't have castles. We have one castle in Toronto, and it was built in the 1900s. But even the school, like you said, the school felt American. I sent Ishmael a picture of the school I went to, which is it looks European. It's a really old 19th century school built in the 1800s. So, Canada has some English, we're part of the monarchy. We're confused. Canadians are confused. We use the American spelling of things sometimes. We use the British spelling of things. The book is just as confused as Canadians are. So
listen,
there you go.
You say that Canadians are confused. I personally think you guys have got some of the best sense and common sense going. So listen, don't put yourself down in that regard. What I also liked about the book as well is that, I mean, the lead characters are teens. It's got a really youthful energy to it, but I mean, it's also full of some very adult themes in terms of it's got some trauma in there. It's got I mean, when it starts, I mean, it's almost a scab on top of an existing scar. It starts with I don't want to spoil too much for anybody who's reading it, but or is wanting to get into it. But I mean, there's an attack at the beginning of the book where a young character, a young lad, dies, and off the back of that, that's where the story kind of kickstarts and jumps forward. But you have a lead character who also has his own demons, metaphorically, and to have that as a driving engine for the book, which then all readers can take on board, because it isn't a horror story by any, certainly not from issue 1, but there's some real shadows. There's some real kind of scar tissue going on there. Was that intentional for it to be an all ages book, which has some real some skin in the game?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on that?
Well, I immediately, I'm dealing with like a kid who befriends a ghost, and I was like, okay, we're dealing with death here immediately, and I kind of conceived of the idea and started writing it at the tail end of the pandemic. So I think there was like a lot of loss. I'm fortunate that I didn't lose anyone during the pandemic, but I lost I was still grieving the loss of my comics, I think. So loss is that common theme throughout of this. At least this first story is really about loss and overcoming loss, and I think
discovering
and discover, yeah, and you know, in order to get over it, you have to go even darker. And you know, yes, the first issue has some horrific moments, but it really gets more horrific by the end of issue 3. We go deeper into kind of the horror territory in issue 4, but I think you have to do that to deal with this, the overcoming of loss, and you'll see that when we resolve it in 5. You know, how Andy deals with this loss, or how he overcomes it, you'll see in issue 5.
Because the relationship, which I kind of got, and I don't know if this is going to make any kind of sense at all, between your lead character and the ghost. Do you remember a series called Mr. Merlin?
No, never heard of it.
No? Okay. Mr. Merlin was Barnard Hughes as Merlin the Wizard in 1982, who befriends a young boy. So there was that kind of backwards and forwards, to and fro, and with the book, with Armored, there is, for me, certainly once, sorry, the lead character's name, I want to say
Andy.
No,
Andy.
I was going to say, where did Ian come from? But no, and yeah. So once Andy kind of finds the armor, I'm not going to say he instantly kind of goes, "Oh, right, I've got magic armor, great," because he very much is wondering what on earth's going on. But the ghost is kind of, there's this real kind of backwards and forwards that instantly, there's an instant relationship there, and which I just found, I've actually found really exciting, because it could have been a real, I mean, obviously we're going to have a lot of fish out of water and a ghost out of time, but the relationship instantly is this kind of, okay, I'm not here to hurt you, I'm not here to disarm you, and Andy's very much a case of, okay, I'm going to accept your help, or I'm going to accept you around. I just need help with this. So there's this real kind of instant rapport between the two. And I'm desperately hoping that people kind of get the Mr. Merlin reference. But I'm wondering if that was a case of instant, sort of that instant relationship between the two, in an attempt to keep to get the engine going and keep it really kind of barreling along without kind of tripping up over, no, go away, I don't need you around, or kind of fighting each other. This a real adversarial kind of relationship. It's a real kind of, okay, let's barrel through.
Yeah, well, Andy has never opened up to anyone. Like when you meet him, for 2 years he's been bounced around from different foster homes, and so this is the first character that he's forced to talk to. Like he has no choice; it's there with him now. He's been told, you're the chosen one, whatever that may be. And he has to open up. There's no escaping this ghost. The one thing about it, though, I think it is my animation background. You know, like I did used to kind of pitch people as like, oh, it's a bit like Aladdin and the Genie.
Yeah.
To a degree. I really like the dynamics of that in movies. I spoke to another podcast where they even saw a similarity to like a horror movie called House 2, where this guy digs up his great-great-grandfather. And there's a bit, and I love all those 80s horror movies. So I think I'm just pulling from a lot of my favorite like bits of media here and there. Like accidentally. Like I don't know how like cognizant I am of that. So yeah,
I mean, the relationship is very strong between those two, but I'm also desperately intrigued by the supporting cast as well. And like I say, I've only read issue 1 at this point, but I really want to see where the supporting cast come in, because I mean, we've got 2 young characters who were friends of the lad that dies at the beginning. So there's already this this engagement from those two, and you've got the young lass who is there to kind of keep the glue together of the group. I'm really interested to see how those come into the story. I mean, what can you tell me about where your plotting went for those first 5 issues, and when it came to introducing a supporting character, how strong you wanted to make that that cast roster?
Yeah, well, I knew I needed to create characters that I could use in the following arcs, because like I as stupid as I was, I kept saying this is an ongoing series, and now I'm stuck. You know, regardless, it will be. I will do like my entire story. I have a story planned out, but for issue 5, I wanted to introduce these characters because I also need to think about the second arc. Like, what will the story be? And you mentioned the girl Tamina. The second arc, in some ways, is her story. In a lot of ways, the second arc is a lot about friendship, and you'll see how the end of this story, I don't want to reveal too much, but the end of this story kind of starts the nugget of what the next theme is about, and it really is about true friendship, and you'll see that. But yeah, I had an idea of how this one ended for sure. Like when I wrote issue 1, I knew how it ended. I just didn't know if it'd be 5 issues, 6 issues. That kind of came along the way, especially when I realized how much it costs to make a comic book.
Indeed.
Yes.
I do like asking this question of writers, because I'm really curious about nebulous stories and nebulous creative endeavors. I'm curious about when you first, I mean, you say you've got this story pretty much mapped out in your head, but now you've got the issues out, or the first issues out, and people are starting to see them and respond to them and react to them, and that feedback's coming back to you, especially when it comes to putting something on Kickstarter, and when you are definitely creating a relationship with your audience. How much is the story, or how much do you feel the story has changed, not only with the audience feedback, but also from your artists and from your writers and your creatives partnerships? How's the story changed in your head from where it originally started?
That's interesting. I don't know if the overall story has changed at all, to be honest with you. It's the details. So for instance, I'd already been thinking about issue 6 to 10, the next arc, for a while during House. Love it. I was thinking about 6 to 10 a lot, even while I was plotting 5. And the thing that is interesting is I think Jay Lee's cover came in when I had finished writing issue 5. And I had come up with who this kind of protagonist was going to be for the next arc. But there's something interesting about Jay Lee's art. So Jay Lee does the 1 in 5 variant cover. On Kickstarter, it was just a regular cover, but for comic shops, it's a 1 in 5 variant foil cover. And Jay's cover has the knight, but he's not fully clothed. He doesn't have the blue glow. He doesn't have the what is it? Like the helmet. He doesn't have a lot of the things. And so the thing that was interesting about it to me is I was like, oh, that looks weird. That doesn't look right. But then it gave me an idea, and it actually steered the second arc in a totally different direction in a way. What I thought was going to happen is actually going to be a bit different. And it just like, it's amazing what one Jay Lee cover can do for a story. So that, in many ways, Jay Lee's cover is going to be so interesting for the next, I don't know if if you could scroll, I don't know.
I'm scrolling through and trying to find it.
Yeah. Oh, there, just pull that up. Pull that up right there. Okay, so you'll see
damn it.
it's a weird, like he's almost forming, right? The ghost is not fully formed. He's kind of slowly materializing, and he doesn't have the blue gold. His eyes are glowing, and you'll see. I'm going to use that imagery in probably issue 7 when we get to it. So,
grief. Yeah, it knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
He does.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I mean, yeah, let's talk about the variant covers then. While we've got like Jay Lee mentioned there, and then, like I say, we do have David Mack on this astonishing cover here for issue 4. That's Trevor Henderson's covered there for issue 5, and Becky Cloonan just knocking it out of the park there for issue 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, okay. Where the hell did you get these names from? How the hell did you land these?
I have to thank Chris Stevens. So Chris, he has worked with some of the biggest names. Bill Sienkiewicz he's worked with, Mike Allred. He's worked with David Mack. Cloonan, I think he worked with on something. I'm not too sure. He also used to own a comic shop in Philly.
Aha.
And so he would have a lot of creators come through, and he stayed in contact with them. And he told me, like, we got Nick pretty early, but he said, Mike, let's get a heavy hitter. And I was like, I don't know if I should spend the money. I'm so poor. And he convinced me to do Jay. And I had already gotten Scott Collins. I reached out to Scott for issue 1 for a Kickstarter exclusive cover, just because of my love of the Flash, and I don't know if I'd be as big of a comic fan if it wasn't for his run on the Flash. So that's why I got him. Chris got me Chrissy Zulo for issue 2 as a Kickstarter exclusive. Yeah, and I felt it was important because I want it's a weird book because it is all ages, right? And I had to convince adults that this book, you can read it, enjoy it. I bet you anything, more adults watch Stranger Things than like kids do.
Sure.
I bet the audience is split 50-50. And I really, it's my own book, so of course I'm going to believe in it. But I really believe it is a book that adults can enjoy, and certain kids that aren't afraid of like the grotesque or horror, they can enjoy. And so I was like, how can we do that? And Nick came up with a great cover that I think is great for all ages. And Jay comes up with a cover that comic collectors would like. And so that was my in. I was like, let's get adults reading it with Jay's covers. Let's get kids reading it with Nick's covers. So issue 1 and 2 has Nick Patera on the main cover. And then we do all these cool variants that are for the comic collector. And the same goes for issues 3, 4, and 5. We got Becky Cloonan, Mac, and Henderson. Henderson has a huge horror following on Twitter and Instagram. He's got like 1 million followers. He does these creepypasta imagery. Look him up. But then I brought an artist from Disney who I've worked with in animation to do painted covers for issue 2. Jeff Dixon does the issue 2 variant. It's the one with the knight jumping into the mouth of the monster.
Right.
I don't know if I have it posted very many places, but you'll see it a lot more soon. But he also does 3, 4, and 5, which we haven't revealed yet. So this is the weird thing, is I actually think 3, 4, and 5, the Jeff Dixon kid all ages covers are actually going to be Kickstarter exclusives. So there's a lot of exclusives this time around, way more. I should say that. But yeah, I hope that explains it. So I wanted to pull in different readers. I wanted to get as many readers as possible in this book.
Understandable. I mean, heaven knows it worked as well, because I mean, the Kickstarter that you did for issue, I believe it was issue 1 and 2, Armored. I mean, yeah. I mean, there you go. 280 backers, 12,839. I mean, that's a tidy chunk of change. That's kind of certainly helps putting the book together. I mean, with Kickstarter, I think it's a case of just a real strong sense of. I mean, I talk about this with creators when I get them to talk about their crowdfunding efforts. It is about a relationship with your supporters and with the campaign followers. I mean, how strong and how much blood, sweat, and tears did it take to pour into Kickstarter to develop that audience and to develop that kind of relationship with the fans?
I actually had no idea what I was doing. Like, I have to say, Clover, that is how they launch all of their books, is through Kickstarter. So this is their model. They're not a traditional publisher. They're a lot smaller. They have to connect on a different level. So they launch everything this way. And I have a pull list. I've backed quite a few Kickstarter books, but I'm not as familiar with it. I was probably way more naive doing this first Kickstarter. I didn't realize what went into it. And it's a lot. Like, I had just started, like, I have another Instagram account where I have about 6,000 followers where I just post comics. It's just comics. No one knows who I am on it. I'm just posting comics because I love comics. But I started a new account and it didn't have a lot of followers. So I had to build up my kind of followers. You know, I need people to kind of trust me. I am a comic fan. I really am. Please believe me. You know, try out my comic. It's been hard. I think I still am a bit naive as to how to connect to that community. I'm really trying. I've connected.
Heaven knows it's worked. So I mean,
yeah, it worked, and but it took a lot. Like, I think Kickstarter's weird too, because a lot of the people I'm friends with, they just go to the comic shop. They never Kickstart. And so I understand Kickstarter, it costs a bit more. It costs $10 for an issue, you know, like, and then you have to pay for
I'll tell you something, that's not extortionate when it comes to some Kickstarters that I've seen. I mean, that was the one thing that I was really thrilled about when I saw the campaign, that it was affordable. It was something that you could jump in every tier and get. I mean, it's not many campaigns where you can land yourself a J. Lee cover for $10. It's like Scott Collins for 10, Nick Patera for 10. I mean, Christy Zulu for 10. It's an affordable campaign, and I think that's certainly one. It's an appeal for people who are wanting to kind of get a sense of a book, and certainly when you're getting into that first couple of issues and you're wanting to kind of dip your toe into the story. But it's the fact that it has succeeded as well as it has done. I think that's where you've developed a audience, and that's where the next campaign comes in. Yeah. So we'll talk about that, and then I'll let you get off and enjoy the rest of your day. But certainly this series or campaign that you're doing, which is yet to drop. Do we have a date for this, by the way?
I don't know. It'll be in either like a week and a half or a week from now. It could be a couple, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, but we're in the time frame. It's basically a week and a half away, I'm thinking.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We just need to get that follower count up. I need help. Everyone needs to just, even if you're not
absolutely. I mean, 63 followers, but I mean, off the back of the success of the previous campaign, I'm fully expecting that to jump nicely.
I should mention that is the reason that is a bit lower is we've been driving a lot of traffic to a BackerKit. So we're having a lot of people actually sign up on BackerKit because Clover can connect with them easier than they can through Kickstarter. And that's why we have a lot more followers on BackerKit than Kickstarter. But I am totally open to people following us on Kickstarter too and getting themselves notified. Just hit that button. Even if you plan to just buy the series on, from the comic shop, it really does help just clicking that notify button just to help us get more eyes on it. Sure.
I'm going to come back to that. So bear with me on that one. But we'll stick with the campaign update for a start. I mean, I'm not going to put on the BackerKit URL because that's a hell of a thing to kind of try and read out. But if you're watching this, you want to find out more, the link to the BackerKit is on Mike's Threads account, threads.net/@Mike Schwartz Writes. It's about 3 or 4 posts down. You will find a link to the backer kit, and you'll find out more. This is certainly from Clover Press's side for putting this together. Putting the full miniseries out as a Kickstarter, was that something that was your idea? Was it a conversation with Clover Press to put the whole series out so people could to go in one go, or what was the thinking for that?
Yeah, it was. I believe it was their idea. The first campaign, you know, we almost had all, like, Ishmael was just finishing up issue 5 on the first campaign. So there was the idea of launching it all at once, but then we realized I'm new. I'm untested. So they did an interesting thing where they just launched with issue 1, and then if we hit a certain number, we'd open up issue 2 for orders. And then if we got even higher, we'd open up issue 3. I think it was good. We just did 1 and 2. That's where we landed with the first Kickstarter. But I'm all for, and I'm pretty sure Clover is too, getting this whole story out there, because as well as I think it reads issue by issue, I've sent it to people and I've had them read it issue by issue. I'm going to send it to you after this too. You're going to have all 5 issues after this conversation. I think it also reads really well in 5 parts, like just reading it all at once. If you want to binge it, knowing you, I say read 1 every 2 weeks.
I mean, that's what I think. I still think the idea of getting the 5 issues, reading an issue, stop, breathe, post as much as I can about it, get a discussion going.
Yeah, the truth is,
and then go back in. And
this is, I do believe there are slightly different audiences for Kickstarter. The Kickstarter crowd is a bit different than the pull list crowd. I do think there's overlap, but I think there's actual differences. And so for the Kickstarter people, they can read it in one go now. They'll be able to. You know, especially the backers that back the first 2 issues, now they can just grab issues 3 to 5 and they'll have it all. But when it comes to the direct market, issue 3, 4, and 5 will still be month to month. So you are going to get that, and that's where the majority of the readers will be, I think, because you see, it's like 280 people back the first book. You don't get high numbers unless you're like, I don't know, Skybound or something. They get like 1,000, but it's still only 1,000. There's way more people buying at comic shops, I think, than I can tell you by the numbers. There's way more people have picked up issue 1 of Armored on comic shops than they did in the campaign. So,
well, that's where I was about to go to, because, like you say, first book, you're a relative nobody in comics. You've been a comic book fan for all this time. To walk into a comic book shop and see your book on the shelf. Can you please describe to me how that felt? And did that grin that you currently are wearing get any bigger than that? Because that must have been a thrill and a half.
It was really weird. The weirdest was the first day. So we had a very bizarre release where Diamond released the first issue like May 19th, and then Lunar had it come out the 29th. So it was this weird like rolling release, not planned by any means. This is what happens when you do an indie comic. Things happen. But that first day, I had my friend, he had sent me a picture. He lives in another city outside of Toronto, of what he picked up that day. And it was like Red Coat. I think it was Red Coat or Geiger 2. I forget which. It was like a Ghost Machine book. It was like Green Lantern. It was Masters of the Universe, and then Armored as well. And I was like, this is insane. This is insane. And then on the weekend, I went back to my hometown, and I just wanted to see if anyone got it, because no shops reached out. There's a few shops have reached out to do signings, but none of my hometown shops reached out. So I went in, and I was like, and the one shop who I hadn't even spoken to, they had it as comic book of the week. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And they had the R.L. Stine quote, and they just happened to pick it as the comic of the week. And I was like, you're kidding me. And this wasn't even a local shop of mine as a kid. It was a nearby shop that I sometimes go into to look at their dollar bin, and I'll pick up books that they still have on the shelves that other shops have sold out of. I was like, you're kidding me. It blew me away. I had my son with me who's only 5, and I was like, take my picture. I had it, it's this terrible photo where it's like crooked and
outstanding.
Yeah,
outstanding.
No, it was amazing.
I'm stunned that no one reached out for a signing.
I have a few. I should say I've had one yesterday, just 20 minutes from my house. I have one on the other side of Toronto on Saturday. My local shop had me in twice to do signings. So, and we sold out at every signing. We have sold out completely.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And it is a case of just reaching out and making that audience and making that connection with fans. Can you see yourself taking issues to a con? Can you see yourself?
I have my very first con appearance at the Niagara Falls Comic Con, which is really exciting because I love Niagara Falls. Chevy Chase is going to be there, and he was in my movie. So there's going to be a lot of Matthew Terrian, who does every portrait cover for me. He's a movie poster artist. He does a lot of comic book covers too. He's going to be beside me. His table's right beside me. So people are going to be able to get him to autograph the cover too.
Outstanding.
It's going to be awesome. And then I'm going to be at the Toronto Fan Expo. And hopefully, we haven't heard yet, but Clover Press may have a booth and maybe a panel, and I'm going to be at SDCC. So regardless, I'll be there as a fan.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll see you there. I'm up for that. I definitely want to catch up and see exactly how the rest of the month and the next month and a half will barrel on for you.
Yeah, I'll bring you some exclusives. Okay.
I'm down for that. I'm always down for that. So I think like you say, you're talking about ongoing story. You've got 1 to 5, which will be going out as this Kickstarter. Can you give an elevator pitch for? I don't know if you can, for the next volume and where the story can go.
I will tell you this. Early on in the creative process with Armored, there was a point where I was like, maybe I'll just make it a movie, because I had the idea before and I thought, oh, this could make a cool movie. And I was working for a company that had a deal with Jackie Chan's producers or something, his people. And so they said, oh, Jackie Chan's looking for animated movie ideas. So I gave them a bit of a pitch, loosely based on the Armored idea. That story that I pitched for Jackie Chan's people, it was immediately rejected by the producers I was working with. They said, Jackie Chan doesn't like ghosts.
Oh, okay.
Which I was like, okay. That story I basically tell in issue 6. It isn't the next arc, but that story I tell is issue 6, and it introduces a new character, and it plays in big time with the second arc. So I'll tell you that when you see, there is a new ghost in issue 6, and if this ever were to become a TV series, movie, whatever, Jackie Chan has to play the ghost.
Fair enough. There you go, Jackie. You've just been called out. So time to talk to your agents, get them fired, get some proper agents who will recommend you decent stuff.
I have a new agent.
Get on board on this. One of the things that I do on Talking Con is I do recommend Threads accounts or social media accounts which may not have a following which I feel they deserve. So I am going to put this in everyone's ear. Please do head to Mike Schwartz. Mike Schwartz writes, certainly on Threads. 248 followers. Time to knock that number up if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Head there and follow that. But also, if you could very quickly talk about Wizards, the podcast guide to comics. So, I mean, that's an exciting thing. Tell me about that.
So I'm not the creator of that podcast. Adam Pope is basically the mastermind behind it. Him and Michael. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher his last name. Kniezel. They created this podcast, and issue by issue they examine Wizard magazine. Like they basically spend 2 issues examining what was going on at the time that issue came out, reviewing, what comics were being talked about. And I was a guest on the podcast a couple times, and then Michael had to step out, and Adam reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join. And so they replaced one Michael for a new Michael. That's me. So I'm fairly new to the podcast, and I grew up on Wizard. I still have all my original Wizard magazines. So yeah, we've been doing this a while. I've been with the podcast for quite a few months now, but there's over 270 podcasts you can listen to, interviews with old Wizard employees. We interview artists, writers, in comics in general. Yeah, it's just fun. We just have a good time seeing what was happening in the 90s,
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I'm always fascinated by old comics journalism, and certainly in the 90s, because that was a whole other ball game, was comics back then. So no, do head to Wizards_comics for more information about that, and no doubt you'll see Michael on a couple of episodes of that as you barrel through all the content they've got on their page.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put it back up on the screen so people can see it. Kickstarter.com/projects/Clover/Press/Armored 1/5 full miniseries by Schwartz and Hernandez. I really do wish you all the very best with this campaign. I'm very much up for seeing where this story goes. I mean, all I've read is issue number 1 for now. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, because it starts with an absolute pulse, which is an interesting thing to say about a ghost story, but that's what I'm going to go with. And no, I'm really excited to see where Armored goes from here. Michael, thank you so much indeed for coming on. I really appreciate your time. Anything else you want to say to anyone? Where would you want to push to people? Do you want to push your Instagram account again?
Yeah, just follow me on Instagram at Mike Schwartz Writes. That's the best place. And if there are stragglers still on X, I am there as the Mike Schwartz. So I
mean, if you really want to, I mean, if you want to sort of like fight through the shopping mall, which is MySpace, to get through to there, by all means, the abandoned shopping mall.
I have to admit, I find Threads far more pleasing. I find the people are just generally more happy, engaging. It's just fun. But I am over there, but I don't do much except for post for Armored. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you are watching this on Twitter, by the way, because I do stream to that. Hi, everybody.
Everyone on Twitter.
Hi. Yeah. Having fun yet? So listen, thank you so much indeed for coming on. Really appreciate it. And all the very best with the campaign going forward.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
See you in San Diego, sir.
Yes. See you there.
Absolutely. How cool was that? One more time, I am going to bring some artwork up on the screen, because it really is just an amazing looking book. Do go check this thing out, because it's available right now. You can find it in your comic book shops. Issue number 1 is available as we speak. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And did I bring up that other page as well, where Andy gets the armor on for the first time? We were talking about the painted page, and it's just a stunning book, which Gabriel Hernandez is an artist on this, and well worth checking out. Just fantastic. There you go. That is my interview with Michael Schwartz, and Armored is available now. Keep your eyes open for that Kickstarter, because you can get issues 1 to 5 moving forward. Thank you so much indeed for coming and watching us today. Like I say, we're live usually each and every Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. We are barreling forward to San Diego Comic Con, and hopefully we'll have a special guest. I've got to kind of line my ducks up on this one, because they're being very busy at the moment. So fingers crossed that guest will be announced tomorrow. But either way, you know me, I'll usually have a lot to talk about as we get ready for San Diego, for all sorts of other cons. I do want to talk about Comic-Con the Cruise as well, because a couple of announcements about that has been dropped over the last couple of days. But yes, please do join us each and every Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. And as always, the best way to find out if we are going live, either on the Sunday or indeed if you want to join us for the special incidental episodes, which we throw into the mix every once in a while on a random whim. Subscribe, like, hit the notifications on the bell, and of course, you'll find out when we go live each and every episode. Thanks to Michael Schwartz for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Back again on Sunday. From me to you, enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.